Well, hello there. It's me, Chuck of Chuck's Captivating Chat. Better late than never. Only 11 minutes late today. I'm sorry, folks. That seems to be an ongoing theme. But as I have explained, I have to work my job here at home and make a lot of phone calls on behalf of Dr. Whimsy Anderson. And sometimes I can't always get it to sync up with precisely 5 o'clock when I'm finishing up the calls, but I'm here right now. I'll wait for a few people to start joining aboard here. Um, it's been a busy period for me. I've been working hard. Hope you're getting through your Mercury retrograde. For those of you who do believe in that, I get some people, I don't believe in that crap. I don't believe in that nonsense. But yet, with astrology, psychic phenomenon, I just feel there's too much evidence in support of that. At least that's been my own personal experience. And as soon as some people start logging on here, I'll tell about my weekend. I had an exciting event. Actually, a couple of exciting events, but one really, really big on Friday night. Hey, Ward, your first one to join in. Thankfully, the mercury has gone down in my neck of the woods and it's cooler. Well, we're supposed to be getting another heat wave here in Los Angeles. I just saw in the weather report. It just seems to be when the East Coast is cool, we get hot. When we get cool, East Coast gets hot. I think it's something about the pressure systems and how it sends back and forth. Hi, Joyce. Thank you for joining. Thank you. I was just apologizing to people for being a little late here, but with my work, I sometimes can't get it to coincide evenly with 5 o'clock Pacific time. But I thank you for joining. It's good to have you here. Yeah, I'm not looking for forward to another heat wave. I don't do well with heat. I never have. I'm very heat sensitive. I'm so heat sensitive. The temperature, I swear the temperature can go up 1 degree and I know it. Or the humidity goes up ever like a notch and I know it. I just don't enjoy it. It's not conducive to my creativity. It's not conducive to my thinking. It's not conducive to my mood. I get irritable. I get irritable in heat. I tend to shut down. And when I hear people going, "Oh, don't you just love this hot summer weather?" I want to say, are you out of your mind? Warden, stay awake a little longer than last week with a slightly later shift, which is very sweet of you to join in any way you can. And I was saying last week, I more than empathize because I used to have to be up at 4:45 in the morning for work, and that was very at odds with my biological clock. Ward, it's cooler here too, where you are, Joyce. Well, that's just evidence. You guys are further east of me, so that just bears out what they're saying about how the heat is coming out here now. We just seem to be trading it back and forth. Or remember that battle between the Ricardos and their window? Yes, I do. And I guess that's a good way to work in a little Lucy story while I'm waiting on some other people here. That was based on Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz's real life. The writers tried to take their real life stories wherever they could and work it in for Lucy and Ricky. Desi being from the hot tropics of Cuba, and Lucy being from upstate New York with the nice snowy Currier and Ives winters. They were at odds. Lucy liked things cold, Desi liked things hot. So they were constantly fighting over the window. And I think even that part on the show where Ricky said, well, fine, we'll compromise. And he put like a little matchbook and lifted the window up by that much. I think that happened for real. And I can only imagine the real life Arnazes, the battles that ensued. I'm sure we saw very cleaned up, sanitized versions on I Love Lucy. But yeah, that's just one of many. And, and that's what made the show so endearing. The fact that it had a lot of truth in it. A lot of their real life marriage was brought into the show, even so much so like the first season or two, Lucy and Desi were wearing a lot of their own clothes on the show. And I think even some of the set pieces and props came out of their home in Chatsworth. Lucy at the time had a passion for early Americana, like early Americana reproductions were very big, as well as actual antiques. And that was, of course, the theme of the Ricardo apartment in the beginning. Let's see. Ward, I wonder if this means their kids are temperate. I don't know. You know, I've met both Lucille Arnaz and Desi Jr. I even spent time many years ago. This was back in 2001. The reason I remember it's 2001 because it was right after 9/11, and it was right after the 50th anniversary of I Love Lucy that year. Through a mutual friend, I got to spend the weekend with Desi Jr. and his lovely wife, Amy. I mean, I didn't stay in the home, but I stayed nearby, and I had breakfast with Desi Jr. the next day and spent some private time with them. I could have asked. I've also known Lucy Arnaz. They might appreciate that. Joyce, for some couples, bantering happens. Only some. I think it's all just about all, but I guess bantering can be good. It's just it's a way of driving home a point. And if it can be done maturely, it can be done like calm, rational. Why do you say irrational? Rational adults, I suppose it can work, but many times it doesn't. You know, one of my things I do on the side, I don't talk about it so much on this show, but I do intuitive readings for people, oracle cards, tarot cards. I do, just what I'm picking up in their energy. And I had quite a few readings this week, and it's a common thing. People want to talk about love. They want to talk about who's my next partner going to be. Joyce, you get that with your astrology. That's people are always wanting to ask about their love lives and so forth. So I get that. But something that's been coming up is just how intuitive people are in their own right, and they don't realize it, or they're not able to acknowledge it, or they're afraid to acknowledge it, or they think it's an overactive imagination. So one of the things I can do is help to act as a checks and balance, and I can help to just confirm things that they are already feeling, and it empowers them. And I say, look what you can do. Look what you are able to do. We all have the ability to do this. We're all far more intuitive than we ever give ourselves credit for. So I love being a teacher, a facilitator, in that, because ultimately when we do things like this, we're just being vessels for information to come through, and we get out of the way. I see it as something humble, and it's an honor to read for people, and I'm always honored when people are trusting of me in that respect. But let's see, what are some other comments here? Ward, mature and calm banter wasn't a hallmark of the Ricardos or others. No, well, it would have left out a lot of comedy had that been the case. Because, one thing about Lucy and Desi in real life, they saw the humor in themselves. So they didn't mind making fun of themselves and letting the writers do that. Sorry, didn't mean to give product endorsement there. Extreme Brands, my late husband and I flirted all the time. That is beautiful. I love that. I have a very good friend. He had that kind of relationship. It was a gay marriage. He and his husband were just soulmates, and the husband was a lot older. He passed away recently, and my friend is having an extremely difficult time. But he said that I think they were together almost 20 years. He said that aspect, the flirtation, the love, the affection, he said that never went away for us. That to me, that's a hallmark of true soulmate love. What was this here? Joyce, well, I was trying to be kind. Let's see. Greetings, Sir Andy. Hi, Andy. Welcome aboard. Joyce, my parents argued over what they had for breakfast 10 years ago. Yes, my mother and father. Oh, my mother would argue about things that happened 30 and 40 years before. And that's not a joke. She really did. My mother, bless her soul, but she was not someone to forgive. And she held on to grudges. I mean, held on. Like, so Joyce, and you said your parents argued over what they had for breakfast 10 years ago. That's a polite way of putting it from my mother and father. Um, let's see, war greeting. People saying hi to each other. This is so cool. It's like a little party. I've noticed when a lot of you go over to Anastasia's channel, which, by the way, to give her a little plug, she's on after me, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. And she's always so grateful for all of you. But I go over and I watch and I see the comments. I see everybody saying hi to each other all over again. I think that's really sweet that we have this kind of community. Where my Nana used to bring up stuff her in-laws said to her 60 years earlier. Oh yeah, my mom. Yeah. I hate to say it because I'm not denigrating my mother by any means, but it was like I learned through her example. And sometimes we learn through negative examples because it shows us the consequences of the actions and what we don't want to be ourselves. And I saw how miserable, I mean, truly, I'm being serious. In all seriousness, my mother made herself so miserable through her own choices and holding on to all this stuff. It was pointless. It was like a record needle in a groove and just playing that same groove over and over and over again, staying stuck in that energy. I watched it. It accomplished nothing but misery. So I think my sister and I both learned from that, or at least to do our best not to repeat those patterns, even though, of course, we all do this. Let's see what are some other comments at Extreme Brands. I am an actress. Oh, I already like you. I am an actress and worked on long run plays in New York. So I kind of treated my marriage like a fun long run play. Always something to discover. I love that. I think that's a wonderful, what do I want to say, like a metaphor, comparing it to a long run play, always something to discover. I've done enough theater myself to know, you can never play something the same way each night. There's always going to be something different. If you're really in the truth of the moment, that's going to shift. That's going to change. Audience reactions are going to change, and as you know, as an actress, it's an exchange of energy between you and the audience, and that will always be different. But I love that very much. I think that's a healthy attitude there. Chuck, can we talk about Lonnie Anderson? What a beautiful lady, but I never really watched WKRP. I wasn't a big watcher of that show. I certainly remember it. I mean, it's a given. She was a lovely lady. I know the character she played on that show was the antithesis of the dumb blonde. It was, in this case, the beautiful, sexy blonde who was highly intelligent. From what I remember from that show, she was a problem solver. She was the voice of reason when things got out of control. She was the one. She was the glue who held it together and she had great common sense. I thought that was an interesting way they wrote her character. So I know that about her. Gosh, when we think of WKRP in Cincinnati, I think the one episode, and you know what I'm going to mention, the turkey episode where they dropped the turkeys out of the plane for Thanksgiving. And some idiot didn't realize that turkeys couldn't fly. And they all crashed to the ground. Anyway, that's like a classic episode. Everybody remembers that episode. But as far as Lonnie Anderson goes, I only have one kind of sort of personal story. And I don't know if it's even the most flattering of stories to tell. I mean, it's not bad, but it was back, I think this was around I could be wrong. I think about 1992, 93, through a friend. I was invited to go to the Directors Guild in Hollywood because there was going to be a screening of a movie, a TV movie with Ryan O'Neal and Katharine Hepburn. They weren't there, of course, but Burt Reynolds produced this. So Burt Reynolds was going to be there and speak before the movie. And we were standing outside the Directors Guild, my friend and I, and a limo pulled up. It was Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson, and I could tell they'd had a really bad fight. You could just, the looks on their faces in the limo. He was like, "Come on, get out." It was not good. It was not good, and I think they divorced not too long after that. I could see there was trouble in paradise. So forgive me for having I hope that's not too negative of a story, but that's my one personal encounter sort of with Lonnie Anderson, where I watched that exchange as they were getting out of the limo. But from what I've read about her on social media, many have said she was just a sincerely nice person. I know Barbara Eden was a good friend. She wrote a beautiful tribute to Lonnie Anderson yesterday, calling her, basically saying, one of my very best friends in the world, and I've lost her. And people adored her, and she had quite a bit of longevity. Her career lasted a long time. I still remember when she played Jane Mansfield. She played Jane Mansfield in a made-for-TV movie, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, this was before he became a major movie star, he played her husband, Mickey Hargitay, the bodybuilder, and and I remember she bleached, her hair was already bleached blonde, but she bleached it platinum to play Jane Mansfield. And I remember she was on a talk show. She was talking to Joan Rivers, and she had a hat on. And she said, "I'm having to wear this hat because I lost a lot of hair." When you bleach your hair like that, it just falls out in chunks, and she had a lot of roots. And so she was wearing a hat. I remember that, but she was very dedicated. And I also remember she did a made-for-TV movie where she played Thelma Todd. Thelma Todd, the 1930s comedian, an actress who she died young. She died at the peak of her career. She was found asphyxiated in her garage. Apparently, the engine had been running, and the gas fumes, she fell unconscious. But it's always been rumored that it was a mafia hit, and it was staged to look like she had died that way. Anyway, Lonnie Anderson played her in that. So anyway, Andy, I don't know. Others may have their own things to contribute. That's all I can think of offhand about Lonnie Anderson that I can contribute. What was this war? Miss Anderson had insisted on Jennifer being Lana Turner as the smartest in the room. Yeah, that was it. She was the smartest in the room. That's the way the character was written. Yes, Joyce, you mentioned this also, the Thanksgiving turkey drop. It's kind of black humor, very sick. All those poor turkeys. I can only imagine PETA, what they would have to say about an episode like that. You dropped turkeys out of an airplane. But anyway, people remember that episode. Lord, I recall Dr. Fever and Mr. Tide, in which Jennifer saved Johnny from being overtaken by an alter ego. Seeing her realize that Johnny wasn't just faking it, but becoming this alter ego was chilling. Wow, I'd have to see that episode. I remember when the show ran. I didn't watch it a whole lot. Yeah, Andy, I mentioned that about her being married to Burt Reynolds. And how I saw them, and they were clearly not happy. I wonder how Mariska Hargitay felt about Miss Anderson's portrayal of her late mother. I don't know. That would be interesting. I've never seen anything one way or the other. And I know that Mariska has a fabulous documentary. I think it's on HBO Max, which I have not seen, but I know it got rave reviews. Extreme Branch. I love Thelma Todd. Yeah, she was called the Ice Cream Blonde. Kind of like Lana Turner was called the Sweater Girl, and that was a title given to her. But she was a gifted comedian. She did movies with Laurel and Hardy. Famously did a movie with the Marx Brothers. She's got some really good scenes with Groucho. And she died in 1936. I've even seen the photo of her lifeless body slumped over the steering wheel in the car. It's really tragic. Let's see, Ward, Thelma Todd, and ex-wife of Gloria Vanderbilt's first husband, who Miss Vanderbilt later claimed bragged about Miss Todd's demise. Really? An ex-wife of Gloria Vanderbilt's first husband, who Miss Vanderbilt later claimed bragged about Miss Todd's demise. I wonder if there could have been like it's always been rumored a mafia hit. You know, it was 1936, and I don't think the crime has ever been officially solved, or I think it may have been officially labeled as a suicide, but many feel it wasn't. You know, people who were around Thelma Todd up until that evening said she was in very good spirits. She had a cafe, Thelma Todd's Cafe. I think that's what it was called, something like that. It's on the Pacific Coast Highway, Santa Monica, as you're going toward Malibu, and the building is still very much there. It's still there. And she had the restaurant, and she lived there also, and it was in the garage where it happened. And it was even rumored that this cafe was like a, shall we say, a watering hole for the mafia, a big stopover point. And she may have pissed off the wrong people. Ward, that's a good point. No actual turkeys were actually harmed. It was only alluded to. When did Mariska's mother pass away again? What you mean, Jane Mansfield? She died in 1967 in a terrible car crash. And Mariska, I think, was about 3 years old, and she was in the back seat of the car. And I don't know if this is correct, so pardon me if I'm wrong, but I think she was with her brother. She and her brother were in the back seat of the car. But Jane Mansfield in the front, she took the full impact of the hit. I know there was a terrible rumor that she was beheaded, including some really tasteless jokes. But it turns out now it was just her body was on the stretcher and the way the sheet was over her, and some photographer got a bad picture and it looked like there was no head on her body, but that wasn't true. She was never decapitated. What happened, the impact caused her wig to fly off her head, and her wig was found. It's like in the road or something, and I think that contributed to the ugly rumor. Oh yes, Ward, you just answered my question. You know, as I go by through and these scroll down, I see people answering what I just said. Miss. Yeah, so Miss Vanderbilt was Mr. Cooper's mother, her last born of her 4 sons. I didn't know that myself. Goddess Val, greetings from West Palm Beach. How are things in that area, Goddess Val? Boy, you live in an area with a lot of stories, a lot of history, things that have gone on. But yeah, I want to see that documentary. I don't have HBO at the max, but you know, its streaming channels are easy enough to subscribe to for a month and then drop. And there are a few things on there I would like to see. I understand it's very, very loving, and I hear it was also cathartic for Mariska, because she never really, you know, she's 3 years old, so she never really got to know her mother. And I was also surprised when it was revealed that Mickey Hargitay was not her biological father, but he raised her as his own, and she considers him her father. They were very close. I remember when he was alive, I'd see pictures of them, and clearly the father-daughter dynamics were there. And do you think she was just trying to protect her daughter? Are you talking about Jane Mansfield protecting her daughter in the back seat? Or, I mean, I'm sure she would have been, you know, as her mother. Miss Hargitay was in the car at the time. Yes, she was 3 years old. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with all the comments here. Let's see here. Did Jim join? I just saw, Jim, I hope I got some people for some new guests to visit your channel someday. Oh, thank you. Jim, I didn't see you here in the comments, but I'm welcome aboard. I'm happy to have you here. Andy, I think Miss Mansfield lost control of the car driving due to thick insecticide and didn't know what happened until too late. And, you know, and I have been, you know, in the South, like South Carolina, when they do those trucks come and they do the bug spraying for mosquitoes and so forth, and it is awful. It's a rancid fog, and I guess in the nighttime it would be a problem. I could see where it would even stick onto the windshield. It just was a tragedy. You know, I want to see the documentary because I've heard different versions about how accomplished and intelligent, allegedly, Jane Mansfield was. I understand that she was a skilled violinist, and allegedly had a high IQ. Allegedly, very high IQ. But I was reading a story with Ann B. Davis, who played Alice, the housekeeper on the Brady Bunch. And she was telling a story once in an interview that she did a stage play with Jane Mansfield in the early 60s. And according to Ann B. Davis, she said that's BS about her having a high IQ. She was kind of dumb, not a bright woman at all. That was Ann B. Davis's impression of her. But then maybe Ann B. Davis just had a little animosity toward her. I don't know. That was just one account. But I want to see the documentary and see how she speaks further about that. What's his word? Sorry, I'm too much of a Luddite for spell check. Spell check it can be evil sometimes. Oh, Extreme Brands, dang, I have to leave driver training with my son. Well, thank you, Extreme Brands, for coming on for as long as you could. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. I have, during this Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrogrades definitely affect communication. Right, Joyce? And I have found that my spell check, word check on my phone has made some really, really evil mistakes that, thank goodness, I've caught before I've hit the send button. But I have, on occasion, it will change a sentence just before I send it. And then I have to go back and try to correct it, or I have to apologize. I didn't mean to say this. And this was almost comical. And this involves Anastasia. We had a big, big laugh on this. She sent me some videos. She's doing a lot of videos for her channel. And she said, would you please watch these, give your opinion and so forth. And I was having a really busy day. So I was just typing, I haven't watched these yet. I haven't had time to watch these yet. And spell check changed the word yet to shit. I swear this is true. I even took a screenshot of it because I thought she's not going to believe this. And thank goodness I didn't send it, because it changed my sentence to, I haven't had time to watch this shit. And I thought, oh my God, that would have been so embarrassing if I hadn't caught that. But I took a screenshot and I sent it to her, and she thought it was hysterical also. But I think many of us have stories where word check has done some naughty things, really naughty things. Like, oh my God, what if I had sent something like that to my mother or my grandmother or something? It would have been really embarrassing. Let's see. Any other comments come in here? I'm going to tell what I did over the weekend. Ward, really, who runs spell check? Ozzy Osbourne? I don't know, but that was almost a little too suspicious, a little too deliberate. Like, I don't know who runs this, if it's done by robots or what, but clearly there's somebody with a really wicked sense of humor. That was just spooky how my word got changed, and my word got changed to that word. Andy, check, my mom is getting better on her standing and walking, and she needs to walk far before she can come around. Well, Andy, I hope and pray she will be better. And even though it is a little bit of an ordeal to make her do this, it will help her incredibly. It's going to help her to regain independence and confidence, as she stands and she walks and she regains her strength. And I know you're being a very good, supportive son for her. Andy Ward, I think it's Mike Tyson. I met Mike Tyson once. He was, you know what? I know all the stories about him. I know about his bad reputation, everything. But he was a sweet guy to me. Very nice. I mean, he had that tattoo on his face and all that. And there was nothing to be afraid of. Nice guy, at least to me. Andy, great news. Congratulations to you and your mother. Yes, that is great news. Really great news. I think we're all happy for you. In fact, I know we're all happy for you. I shouldn't say I think we're happy for you. But no, I'm just going to tell what I did over the weekend, and I did something big on Friday night. I mentioned, what was this, Andy? August 10th, she be away from home for 9 months. Oh, I know how much she wants to get home, but having her stand, having her walk, having her get her strength, this is going to give her the independence and the confidence to return home soon, I hope. But anyway, I was going to tell what I did. I mentioned this last week that I had tickets to see Cynthia Erivo and Adam Lambert at the Hollywood Bowl in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And it was going to be, she was going to do 3 shows only, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I checked into it. No more performances, strictly these 3 performances here in Los Angeles at the Hollywood Bowl. That's it. And I made a point of getting a ticket for this, and it was not easy. It was almost completely sold out, but I, like 8 weeks beforehand, I got one of the last remaining tickets, and thank goodness I did. I knew it was going to be a great evening. I mean, the woman is an incredible talent. I'm lightly acquainted with Adam Lambert because he used to come into my health store when I was in the business. We used to talk all the time, so I know him. He's a sweet guy. But Cynthia, I don't know if a woman has ever been cast in a production of this as Jesus. But I saw an interview the day before with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he said he had always wanted to cast a woman in the role. He had always wanted to mount a production like this, but I think he had to find the right woman. Well, he found the right woman, Cynthia Erivo. It was the performance of a lifetime. And I mean, I don't say that lightly. I've seen a lot of great theater in my own lifetime. And I have to say, this was maybe one of the top 3 to 5 performances I have ever in my life watched on stage. She gave every single thing she had in her heart and her soul to that performance. Maybe that's why she only did 3 performances, because I don't know how she could have done this night after night. I mean, everything. I mean, it was just a full-on emotional performance, singing, full voice, everything, giving everything she had. And she got in mid-show a 2-minute standing ovation that just went on and on and on. It was an audience of 18,000 people. I could hear people crying in the audience, weeping. I mean, just clapping as hard as they could, and she deserved it. And they have big monitor screens there, so there were close-ups of her face when she just finished, and she had just tears running down her face, and the audience just would not stop clapping for her. And I heard the next night it was a 3-minute ovation. And I saw a claim today on social media, the last night got an 8-minute ovation. I don't know if that's true or not, if I can confirm that. But this was an electrifying, and I do mean once in a lifetime performance, because if she is truly not going to ever do this again, which I hope she changes her mind on, I'm one of a small select people. You know, the bowl seats about 18,000 people. There were 3 nights. So what was that? About 58,000 or something. Anyway, I'm one of a small number of people who had that privilege of watching this performance live. I've been seeing on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, lots and lots of video of this. And there are people all over the country, in fact, all over the world, who did not know she was doing this, who are now going, I wanted to see this. I would have flown to Los Angeles for this. I mean, people from Europe who said, I would have flown to LA to watch this. Oh, I wish I could have seen this. So I realized how incredibly lucky I was. Really blessed, really privileged to be there. I have seen the production 3 times. And one of the times I saw it with Ted Neely, who he was in the original Broadway cast, and he also did the movie version. He played the role, of course, of Jesus Christ. And he was in attendance, and I found a beautiful photo of the two of them embracing. And he put in the caption, he said, "There's only a handful of us who know what it is to play," he put in capital letters, "that role and to sing that song. Only a handful of us truly intimately know what that is." And he was saying basically he felt such a kinship with Cynthia Erivo for that reason. It was just a lovely picture. And after the show was over, Andrew Lloyd Webber came out on stage, and he was visibly moved and just beaming with pride. Like, yeah, I was right. I was right in casting a woman in this role. And Cynthia Erivo was everything the role needed to be. I mean, there really was a Christ-like energy to her. She was just filled with that energy, and she made the audience feel that. And then to say nothing of the brilliance of the other performers. And Adam Lambert, my God, what a vocal range he has. And I possibly could have sent a note backstage, because he does know me. Not well, but he knows me. I could have maybe asked to go backstage, but I have a feeling the security was so unbelievably tight that night. But, and especially with all the celebrities there and Andrew Lloyd Webber there. But wow, I'd love to have met Cynthia. And I will add, she's a tiny little woman. You know, you can ask Anastasia about this, because she's met her. And Anastasia said she couldn't be more than 5 feet tall. And you saw that on stage. I'm 6'2". Adam Lambert, because I've been with him, he's about my height. So I could see the contrast. What a itty bitty little woman she is. And of course, being on stage in costume, she wasn't wearing her usual high heels and everything, which of course gives her some height. But yeah, look for the clips on the YouTube and so forth. You will be blown away, as I was, even if you're just getting a secondhand experience of watching it on video. But I was thrilled. I was honored to be there. And I better get back to my comments here. Word. It sounds like it was mutual mesmerization that happened in those performances. So let me see if I can go back here. Sorry, there was. Oh, wait. Okay, here we are. Warriors, sir. It sounds like Miss Erivo was on par with Miss Streisand and the late Miss Garland. Yes. Only Cynthia Erivo is very much her own performer, just as Barbara Streisand was her own. Judy Garland was her own. But I think as far as caliber of talent, I would definitely say they would be peers. Cynthia Erivo definitely has that electricity in her. She's like Streisand and Garland, a gifted actress, gifted actress married to a stunning singing voice with a huge range. You know, that when I saw Ted Neely do it on stage, I was marveling, because the role is written in a very, very high key for a man to sing. And I was wondering, how did he do that? Hit those high notes and sustain them. And plus, when you're doing that on Broadway, doing that night after night after night, you know, I thought the score actually suited a woman's voice better for that reason. But as you know, Cynthia Erivo, I think when she sings Defying Gravity and Wicked, there at one point she hits a high E. And what made that performance all the more remarkable was that was not CGI. They literally had her strapped in wires, and they were flying her around for real. And she was not lip syncing to a recording. She was singing live while being flown and hitting those very high notes. So she is a stunning performer in every respect. Oh, wait, Andy, you're asking if Cynthia has the same problem as Jada Pinkett Smith has. I'm sure you're referring to the baldness. No. Jada Pinkett Smith has, I think it's, forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, someone correct me, alopecia. Cynthia intentionally shaves her head. And she first started shaving her head when she was playing the witch in Wicked, and she had all that green makeup on and the special wigs and everything. And she found it helped save time, not having to tuck her hair up in a wig. And also they were able to blend the makeup better. So she had no qualms with doing it. And she loved the look so much, she's kept it ever since, the shaved head. So that's where that comes from. If you look at Cynthia, you'll see stubble on her head, a little bit of stubble where she shaves. Let's see. Sounds like it was mutual mesmerization that happened in those performances. Yes. Well, it was Glenn Close who was talking about stage acting. And she said, when you act on stage, you have an exchange of molecules with your audience, meaning it is an energy exchange. It is very much give and take. And we certainly saw it that night. There's so much love from the audience was coming to her, and she was giving that love back to us. And yeah, I was told by people, I put people in tears when I would sing gospel songs and a solo. Oh, Andy, you should sing more then. I hope it's something that gives you joy. It sounds like it does. And you put a lot of your heart into that. I've been talking with a lot of people in my own readings about it's important that we have our own artistry, our own means of expressing our creativity. And it doesn't have to necessarily be traditional, like what I do, like drawing and painting or writing or dancing or playing the piano or something like that. Your artistry can be cooking in the kitchen. It can be working in the soil with your garden, with your flowers. It can be crocheting, netting. Art can be many things, but it's important to have your own creative expression that makes your heart sing, that fulfills you. And Andy, if that does that, you should be doing that. Definitely. I can't encourage that more than anyone. Andy, the thing Jada Pinkett Smith has, I can't spell it. Well, I was talking about alopecia, and of course, how Cynthia does not have that. She shaves her head. And my comments moved on me here again. This is the most annoying thing when I have a place and then I can't find it again, but here we go. Oh yeah, I liked Andy when John Legend played the part of Jesus. That was a made-for-TV production. Yeah, he was wonderful. Mr. Andrew Lloyd Webber, he was there that night. He very much lived to see it happen. He was thrilled. He loved it. You should have seen his face, how proud he was. And when he embraced Cynthia on stage, it was a big, big hug. Like he was just moved to tears by her performance. And that's coming from the master who created the show. And Ward, that's true. Miss Garland was 4'11". Cynthia's about 5 feet tall. Another one who has a powerful voice I've met a few times, Kristen Chenoweth. And she was there in the audience that night. She's a tiny, tiny little thing. I don't know. She's more than 4'10", 4'11", but boy, she has a big voice. Or I meant in terms of intensity and passion in performances to Miss Erivo as well as Miss Streisand and Miss Garland. Oh, yeah, I was referring that too. The intensity, the passion, the talent, the brilliance, the presence, they're very much peers of each other, very much. And, I would include Lady Gaga in there. I've watched her perform on stage. And of course, she proved, when she got an Oscar nomination for A Star is Born, she's a good actress too. And my God, what a voice. I saw her 10 years ago at the Hollywood Bowl with Tony Bennett. And that was another really memorable, I like to think of as a once in a lifetime experience. Because they were both in top form that night. Tony Bennett was close to 89 at the time. And, I've always been a fan of his. I have recordings, CDs of his music going back to the 1950s. And I sat there that night, I closed my eyes and just listened. I thought, my God, he at 89 was singing better than when he was younger. I mean, that's incredible. He was belting out these big, big, sustained high notes that how would an 89-year-old man do? But other than they're just channeling this. That's what I believe. But Gaga was in top form also. And their chemistry was so good together because you could see, first of all, how much they loved and respected each other. That was just so clear all throughout the show. And there'd be moments where he'd do some solos, she'd do some solos, and then they do duets together. But the way they complemented each other, it's like, I know it's a little cliche to say this, but Tony did give her class, but in turn, she made Tony hip and young and accessible to the youth crowd. And they were just magic together. Magic. So I would definitely put her in their league. Or I love YouTube karaoke. I always dream of singing with a real orchestra. Wouldn't that be a kick to sing with a real orchestra? That's a privilege not too many people get, but those who do, I'm sure it's a thrill. I know whenever I go to concerts like at the Hollywood Bowl or like the Dorothy Chandler, where the acoustics are really good, where you can really not just hear the orchestra, you can feel it in your bones. It resonates, it vibrates. And I can only imagine what it's like to be a singer up on stage and have that orchestra right behind you. What a high that would be. Sounds something like Cicely Tyson, who wore a very short afro for many decades. Yeah, she did. But Cynthia takes it right down to the scalp. Or I would have to have seen pictures of her with her hair. Well, there are. Just Google search her. There are plenty of pictures. Like, for example, Cynthia Erivo won a Tony on Broadway for The Color Purple, the musical version. She had her hair there. I don't know if she was wearing a wig for the show, but she definitely had her hair of some kind. Yeah, Andy, you're missing a cameo from Sasha. I don't know where she is right now. She decides if she's going to make a cameo, not me. Though you do see me picking her up and trying to balance her, but that's more often than not because I'm trying to keep her from leaping onto the keyboard and cutting the show off. One of these days, she's going to leap forward and this picture is going to go blip, and I'm going to disappear, and you're going to know what happened. But that's why you often see me holding her down and trying to keep her in place. Let's see here. Yes, Sasha is her own agent. She pays herself. Yes, she pays herself. Yeah. No, she's got me taking care of her. I scoop her litter box out and feed her, and basically she's got a pretty darn easy life, as most cats do. Let's see. Tiny Big Voice, Lady Gaga, another beautiful person. Yes, indeed. Lady Gaga. Yeah. Tori Sun Moon. Yeah. Lady Gaga inspires me. She inspires me because from all the stories I've heard of people who've met her, she's a genuinely good person. I hear this over and over, and she's generous and she's giving. I remember there was a little story a while back. It was while we were having the fires here in LA. Gaga just showed up at one of the police stations with a big stack of pizzas, and she said, "Here, I thought you guys might like a little treat right now." That's the kind of person she is. Lady Gaga has a true appreciation for living legends and gets the historic importance. Yes, she does. I think where you really saw that was when she was on stage with Liza Minnelli at the Oscars 2 or 3 years ago. And poor Liza, of course, is in bad health. She's in a wheelchair now. And from what I understand, because if you remember the Oscars that year, it was Gaga and Liza. Liza was in a wheelchair. And it's my understanding that was not supposed to have happened. They were supposed to have put Liza in a chair, where she could cross her legs and sit and have some dignity. Instead, they just roll her out on stage and leave her there. And Gaga, bless that woman, Gaga saw what was going on. And well, it's like when I do something like this, when you're on live, you're editing yourself in the moment. Gaga just started thinking quickly, and she saved the day, and she made a point of preserving Liza's dignity. And Gaga reminded the audience, this is a legend here. Give this woman respect. Give her acknowledgement. She has earned it. She's a giant of the industry. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something to that effect. And what was interesting, pardon me, my eye here, the microphones were on, and it caught something that it wasn't supposed to catch, but you heard Gaga. You could tell Liza was shaken, and she was scared. Like, why is this happening? Why did they wheel me out like this? And Gaga just put her hand on her shoulder, and you heard her say, I got you. I got you. And I thought that was beautiful. And I saw that again, that same compassion, that same dignity, when that last performance with Tony Bennett, which was aired as a CBS special. And that's when Tony Bennett was in the thick of Alzheimer's disease, 95 years old. And it was going to be his last performance. And, because for some reason, he still could remember his lyrics. He could still remember his songs. That was so deeply ingrained in him. But the potential was there for anything to go wrong on stage. And I could just tell Gaga she had a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, a plan E. She covered her bases. She was ready to step in no matter what happened. And thankfully it did go well. But she was like with Liza, very tender, very supportive. This is where you saw that woman's heart. And I just loved it when she said, Mr. Bennett, Tony, it was his last song he was ever going to sing. And she said, would you sing I Left My Heart in San Francisco? Because nobody in the world sings it like you. It was beautiful. And of course, he sang the song beautifully. The audience went crazy. And then Gaga came and she took his arm and she said, Tony, all right, come here. She said, Mr. Bennett or Tony, may I have the great honor of escorting you from the stage? And that was it. That was Gaga. She was looking out for him. And Mary Martin is Peter Pan. Yes, indeed. A great, great talent. I loved that when I was a kid. And thankfully, Peter Pan is recorded. The 1960 production, which was live and in color, was recorded on videotape, and it still exists. I think you can find it on YouTube. It was originally done twice before in the 1950s, I think in 1955, 56, in black and white, but it was telecast live. But all we have of those performances are these grainy kinescopes because videotape didn't exist yet. But in 1960, they were able to record it on video, and it is wonderful. There is just such an excellence to it, a polish that you don't see that much anymore. Mary Martin was so accomplished. She was so wonderful as Peter Pan. And, of course, it's always been the tradition for a woman to play that role. And she liked to keep her hair short. She originally kept her hair short because she was doing South Pacific, famously South Pacific in the late 40s. And there's that big number in the middle of the show, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair, where she shampoos her hair on stage. And Mary Martin needed to have short hair that she could dry very quickly and come back out on stage. So that's where that started from. But the short hair served her for Peter Pan. There is a story I have about that. She was on wires, and there was someone up above working the wires and swinging her around and everything, and the other kids. And there was one night he wasn't paying attention and he slammed her into the wall, and she broke her arm, and she had to leave the production for a while and came back. And Mary Martin was asked, would you want us to fire him? And she said, no, I don't want you to fire him, because I know he will never make that mistake again. So that's why she wanted to keep him. And so that was a little story there. That's about all I can think of about Mary Martin offhand. Maybe some others of you have stories, but speaking of Peter Pan, I got to tell this one. I've never told this before. I like to think almost arranged for Anne Hathaway to play that role. Let me explain. The NBC did a live television version of that a few years ago. And Craig Zadan, the great, great producer, he and Neil Maron were partners. They produced Chicago and I forget what else, a whole string of wonderful musical productions. And anyway, Craig Zadan also and his partner also produced the Oscars for a couple of years. But he was going to produce this live TV version of Peter Pan. And I said, have you cast her yet? And he said, no, we're searching. We can't find the right woman for this. And anyway, Anne Hathaway was one of my clients. And she had given an interview a while back. She said it was her dream to play a great role on Broadway, a great musical role. And this is when she had her real short hair. Remember, she cut all of her hair off for Les Miserables. She did it on camera. They cut all of her hair off on camera. So her hair was still real short. And I knew that Anne Hathaway was naturally athletic. She had a beautiful singing voice. And I was talking with Craig Zagan. I said, well, what about Anne Hathaway? And he said, oh, my God, she'd be perfect. But we couldn't get a big star like her to do it. And I said, I talked to Anne. Let me just broach it with her. He said, why not? So anyway, Anne Hathaway, I said, I don't know if you know this, but I talked to Craig Zadan, and he's producing a live TV version of Peter Pan. And when I brought up your name, he was very excited about you. He said, really? Really? I said, why don't you have your people call his people? Well, nothing came of it because she obviously was not cast in it. I don't know what happened, but I did act as a go-between. And I think I got her people to talk to his people about it. And she would have been fabulous in that role. So I'm telling the story there. And that's about all I can add to it. Let's see, where's the other comments here. Jim, hi, Jim. I'm sorry, I'm so late. I had to, don't apologize. I'm just happy to have you here. I'd help my mom and my brother with separate tests. So glad I got here before it ended. Well, thank you, Jim. That means a lot. And I know Anastasia appreciates you a lot also. Ward, can anyone imagine JR having a mother who could sing so well and play Peter Pan? Yeah, J.R. Ewing's mother. In fact, in later years, Mary Martin used to introduce herself that way. She said, well, I'm JR's mother. So sorry, my throat gets a little dry. Where's the other comments here? Yeah, that it was, who played Mary Martin? It was Brian Williams, the newscaster, the former news anchor. It was his daughter who played Peter Pan. They went with someone relatively unknown, but I was rooting for Anne Hathaway, and I would have been so excited because I would have known I was the reason she got cast. No, I'm not name dropping. This really did happen. Warren, Miss Martin saying, well, that was one of her trademark songs, My Heart Belongs to Daddy. And that is kind of a surprisingly sexy little song. Yeah, and in that TV show, what Christopher Walken played Captain Hook. He was good. I read a story, that was during the pandemic, the height of it. And they kept the entire cast quarantined for 2 weeks before the show because they didn't want to take a chance on anybody getting sick, getting the flu, getting COVID when they had a live production. So they were all quarantined together. I'm one of the few who saw the Get Smart movie. I never saw that. That was Steve Carell, I think, and Anne Hathaway's 99. You know what? I bet she was good as 99. I should check that out. I like Anne Hathaway. She's a sweet person. I can tell you that. I haven't seen her in a long time, but I used to see her almost every day for a while. Valerie, hi, Chuck and Chad. Sorry for being late. No, don't worry. I'm just touched when anybody comes on here to spend time with me. Believe me, it's my honor. It's my honor to have you. And people are saying hi to each other again. Let's see if any other comments come in. But let's see. So far, I've covered. For those of you who have been late, I covered seeing Cynthia Erivo and Jesus Christ Superstar at the Hollywood Bowl. And I talked about how I almost played casting agent for Anne Hathaway and Craig Zadan in the production of Peter Pan. It didn't happen. We've talked about Mary Martin herself. forget what else we have talked about here. But, the other thing I did, I went to see a beautiful production of the musical Some Like It Hot at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood here. And that's a lot of fun. I had seen it when on the Tony Awards a couple of years ago. They showed scenes from it, when they do the Broadway musicals during the show. And I know that the man who starred in it won a Best Actor Tony for it. And I think it didn't win for Best Musical, though. But it's a good show. If a touring production of it ever comes to your city, I really recommend it. It's like a big, old-fashioned Broadway musical, with costumes and sets and lots of dance and great singing. Very funny. It was everything a great Broadway musical should be. And it was also lighter because I was talking the month before I saw the touring production of Parade, which also came here from Broadway. And that Parade won, I think, the Best Director Tony, and it wasn't for Best Revival. It had originally come out in the 90s. And that was also one of the best musicals I've ever seen. But that's a deadly serious show. That is, it's about Lucille and Leo Frank, a young Jewish couple in Georgia during the turn of the century. And he was falsely accused of murdering a child in his pencil factory. And well, I don't want to ruin the story, but it's a tragedy. But it was set to a beautiful score. You had magnificent actors on stage, sets, lighting, again, everything a night at the theater should be. But I had a great time last night at Some Like It Hot because it was just the medicine I needed. I had a big birthday this year, and I didn't get to really celebrate it. It was July 8th. So I thought what I'm going to do is just spread the birthday out. And so that's why I booked some theater tickets, Hollywood Bowl, the Some Like It Hot, going out for a few nice meals. I'm just thought, well, this is just an extension of the birthday. What was this? Nobody's Perfect. They do, that's the famous line in the movie Some Like It Hot. In fact, Billy Wilder said he considered that the single greatest line he ever wrote, and it's on his tombstone. It's on his tombstone in Westwood Memorial Cemetery. I think it says, "I'm a writer, but nobody's perfect." And incidentally, that's the same cemetery where Marilyn Monroe is buried. And today is the anniversary. Let's see, today would be the 63rd anniversary of her death. Interesting enough, just to bring that up. But they did an interesting twist on Nobody's Perfect in the show, and I don't want to ruin it other than they actually build a musical number around it. And some would say, oh, they did a woke interpretation of this. Just like a very liberal, up-to-date, where, it's the two men in drag. Well, one of the men decides that he discovers this is who he is, and this is his authentic self. And anyway, I don't want to ruin the story, but they did a nice little twist on it. It was very sweet and funny, and the performances were so good. And the choreography, there is a chase scene in this. It's about the best you're ever going to see on stage. I better get back to my comments here. Let's see. So he used it as an autobiography title too. Yeah, he loved that line. It's on his tombstone, as I was just saying. He said it was the most perfect line he ever wrote. And in that same interview, this is the 63rd anniversary of Marilyn Monroe. There are all the stories about how problematic she was on that movie. Very difficult. Not people said she was not a mean person. She was, Tony Randall was asked this. Was she bitchy on the set? He said, never. She was a sweetheart, but she was difficult. She was complicated. She was always showing up late. She could never remember her lines, that type of thing. So it annoyed the other actors. And Billy Wilder even, there's a story where it took 80 takes just so she could say the line, "Where's my ukulele?" And he even had the line on cue cards. He had it written on paper inside the drawer. She had to open a drawer up. It was there inside the drawer. It was on cue cards. She still flubbed take after take. And a lot of the reason was Marilyn was the bigger she got in her career, the more insecure she became because so much more was expected of her. So she was terrified sometimes when she'd be on the set, and that would cause her to blank out and forget her lines. So there was a lot of difficulty. But Billy Wilder was asked about this, and the interviewer was saying, well, we've heard about how impossible Marilyn was and difficult and all that. And Billy Wilder stopped the interviewer and said, you know what? If she were still alive, I'd be on my hands and knees begging her to do it again. He said, I would beg her to do another movie with me. He said, yes, she was a pain in the ass. Yes, she was difficult. But look at the finished product. Look at that incredible movie we got. Look at that performance she ended up giving. It was worth it to me. And I would work with her again. So that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know you used to know his autobiography. What was this, Jim Nettie? You're welcome. I don't know if you know that they used to show Mary Martin's Peter Pan on TV every year on NBC. They did for many years. They don't do it anymore, but you can find it on home video and DVD, and I believe it's still on YouTube, so you can watch the complete performance. And you had a dream where you were being taught tap dance from Christopher Walken and Gene Kelly. Well, all I can say is you were being taught by the masters. I do not possess one shred of talent for dance, much to my frustration, much to my chagrin, because I have even taken dance classes. I did this when I was in college. I took jazz and ballet, and that's where I quickly discovered I don't have talent for this. It's hard. You don't have the talent. It's hard. But two dancers that I love are the Nicholas brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They did some movies with Gene Kelly. They were a lot of big movie musicals in the 40s. They were unbelievable. Talk about defying gravity, the leaps and jumps and things they did that just seemed physically impossible. And I I either read or I saw a video somewhere where one of them, their granddaughters, I think it was, I forget which brother it was, but it was his two granddaughters. They were taught to dance by their grandfather. Talk about that. And they said, oh, he was a taskmaster. He was tough. He was relentless. Do it again. But they were taught to dance. And now, I don't know if they still do, but I think they still have a dance school in the Crenshaw district of Los Angeles. And I thought, as bad as I am, just to do one class, to say that I studied with the granddaughters of one of the Nicholas brothers, I might still do that someday. And Gene Kelly, I'm lightly acquainted with his widow, Patricia. I met her, dear lady, and she was much younger than him. I think almost 50 years younger. And a lot of people assumed that she was a gold digger. She was taking advantage. No, those two loved each other. They were soulmates. And she, to this day, is very protective of his legacy. He's been dead for over 30 years, and she has never remarried. She said, I couldn't bear to remarry. Gene was the love of my life. But she does a one-woman show around the country where she tells her stories about Gene, and she's wonderful. Like, she's on social media. You can write to her, you can private message her, and she will answer your questions. She's very good about that. And you had a dream where you sang for Dean Martin at his house. Wow. That's not so bad. Dean Martin was fabulous, and my screen just moved on me. This annoys me. I can't get the comments to stay still. Dean Martin was amazing. His granddaughter, AJ, is not Dean. I meant to say Frank Sinatra, his good friend's granddaughter. She's a lovely singer. And I went to, I can't say a concert. It was more like a little nightclub venue type thing for a few people, very intimate, but I did go. She's my neighbor. Oh God, shouldn't say things like that out loud. That's violating privacy. But anyway, let's just say I went to see her show, and she doesn't sing quite like her grandfather, but she has a beautiful voice in her own right. And Dean Smart, daughter, Deanna. I don't know if it's Deanna or Dina, but she's her daughter. She's a good singer, and I've seen her on social media. And is asking, is Monroe buried next to Hugh Hefner? Yes, that's true. It was Hugh Hefner who bought the plot, there in Wall Crypts. He bought the crypt next to Marilyn Monroe. And I think at great expense, like over $1 million or something, but he bought that, and he is buried next to her. And I remember reading in the news that there's some anonymous man who is in the crypt directly above Marilyn. And she said that the widow said that over the years she has had so many offers. Would you be willing to reinter your husband, and can we buy that spot above Marilyn? And I don't know if I think she turned them all down. I don't know if she ever changed her mind about it. But I'm sure some very big money was being dangled her way. I would call that Miss Martin's Peter Pan rebroadcast as a kid. Oh, yeah, I do too. It was like the Wizard of Oz, annual viewings. And about Joyce, about your experience with spell check during Mercury retrograde. That's a perfect example. Yes, Joyce. I mean, it was so outrageous. I thought, Anastasia's not going to believe this. She's going to think I'm joking. So I took a screenshot of it. I corrected my message, of course, sent it to her. And then I said, okay, you want a good laugh here? Let me show you what spell check did to this message originally. And we were both like, oh my God. What if you were writing to your boss, or you were writing to your mother or your grandmother, and it changed one of your words to an obscenity? And I mean, not just the obscenity of the word, but the whole tone of the sentence became very offensive. So, and sometimes I don't catch that before I hit send. But yeah, Joyce, when you start doing your shows again, this could be one of your topics. You could do a world of shows just about Mercury retrograde and the things that happen. And I'm sure a lot of us, as your viewers, could chime in with our own stories. Think about that. Or Mr. Wilder once said they had an aunt in Vienna who would be on time. Oh, yes, I know this story. I once had an aunt in Vienna who would be on time at 6 a.m. to the theater and let her perfect, but who'd watch her? That's true. No, Wilder really appreciated what he had in Marilyn. And, I always get frustrated when people go, oh, Marilyn Monroe had no talent. No, that woman was gifted. Maybe it was hard to get the results, but what ended up on screen was really good. There were many imitators of Marilyn Monroe. Jane Mansfield, for example, Sherry North. All the other studios were trying to come up with their own Marilyn Monroe. Even 20th Century Fox was doing it because they wanted to keep Marilyn in line. Like, don't you get too big-headed on us because we've got another one of you waiting in the wings. Well, the reality was, and history has borne this out, nobody could do what Marilyn Monroe did. She was so much more than just the blonde hair and the sexy body and the little girl voice on that. No, there was something in her soul that nobody else had. Well, first of all, she was a wonderful comedian. Watch her movies, like 7-Year Itch, How to Marry a Millionaire. She was a gifted comedian. You want to see what a great actress she was. Watch her in Don't Bother to Knock. Watch her in The Misfits. A good, solid dramatic actress. And also she could sing. I have a CD of about 38 songs. I guess she recorded, I don't know, she did many albums. She's certainly not known for it, but she had a lovely, lovely singing voice. And she could dance too. There was just a presence. like I remember Katharine Hepburn describing herself. Well, she said, "Well, Spencer was like a baked potato when he was on screen." She said, "I was more like a fancy dessert or something." But I always thought Marilyn was like that, like a beautiful dessert, a souffle. Um, she was special. She was so beautiful to look at on screen. But I love to watch her act and perform. I'm a fan of hers and an admirer. Um, let's see here. Dorothy Dandridge was married to one of the Nicholas. Yes, that is true. I saw the movie. Halle Berry played Dorothy Dandridge. In fact, won an Emmy for it. And they touched upon the tumultuous marriage they had. They were together for a while. In fact, I think she danced on screen with him. I think it was it was the original version, Glenn Miller's Chattanooga Choo Choo. And I think was it Sun Valley Serenade? It was one of those. It was a musical from the early 40s, black and white. And I think it was 20th Century Fox, and she danced with them and sang. Let's see here. Valerie, you could teach me to Chuck. You could teach me to dance. Chuck started classes at age 3. Well, I'm open. I always wanted to. I'm a klutz. 2 left feet, 2 right feet. Because I know from when I was taking class, you have to take the choreography. You have to get it in your head, but then you have to be able to let go of it and just let the talent take over, and then it has to flow and it has to be effortless. Well, I was still stuck in my head just trying to remember, okay, do I step here? Do I step there? Do I do this? I do that, so I was mechanical. I was awful. I was an embarrassment. But I tried. And also I developed a great respect for dancers because in my naivete, I did not realize how you use your whole body, because literally from the chin down to my toes, I wake up the next morning so sore and aching, using muscles in my body I didn't know existed in my body. So I have the greatest respect for a dancer and for the discipline of a dancer and what any of you do. But yeah, I'm open. If it would be probably the greatest credit on your resume if you taught me to dance. Let's see here. And my screen just moved on me. I try to move down, and it always does this. Let me get back to where I was. Cinco's Widow. Joyce, my granddaughter Jane loves to dance. She got Clara in the Nutcracker this year. That's fabulous. And I went out to see Desi Arnaz Jr. and his wife Amy in Boulder, Nevada. Amy was a dance teacher, and she had a school, little girls she taught, and Desi Jr. had a stage theater there, and they had the recital. They had the production of the Nutcracker when I was there. It was in early December, and of course it was a Christmas show. But it was fun watching that with children, and the enthusiasm of the children and the love they were putting into it. And, private little story. I sat up in the control booth with Desi Jr., and he was like a little boy, with the spotlight and working the soundboard and all the controls and stuff. He was loving it, really in his element. And there were those sweet little girls on stage. Ward Spellcheck's Pitfalls almost sound like a single change intonation would change the whole meaning of a paragraph. Well, that was certainly true in my case. I mean, it turned my innocent little sentence into something extremely offensive and insulting. And I'm just glad I didn't send it. I'd had to have done some fast explaining. Probably had to have gotten on the phone instead of texting. I didn't mean that. I promise you I didn't say that. But anyway, Joyce said people are congratulating your granddaughter, and I offer my congratulations too. I know how proud you are of her. And I know you will be there in attendance. Very, very proud. Yeah, I'm sure she'll do a great job in the show. Let's see if I can move this without making my comments go blip. Maybe if I just move it slower and more deliberately. Ward, I guess I'm likening spell check to Mandarin Chinese in terms of a single different character. Oh, you're reminding me of that episode of Family Affair. I don't think it was Mr. French. It was one of the episodes where Mr. French had to be away and realized Sebastian Cabot had a heart attack. So they had to bring in another actor to play his brother, Niles French. And of course, they came up with this same thing on the show about how Mr. French had to go in service of the Queen. But anyway, Buffy had befriended this little Chinese girl, and Mr. French wanted to be gracious to the little girl, and he wanted to learn some words in Mandarin. And he ended up saying something very offensive to her, like you had the face of the devil or something like that. It was cleaned up. It wasn't obscene. It was, after all, it was CBS and it was a family show, but he said something so offensive to the little girl. And then he felt terrible about it. And he tried to find out what he had said and how can I correct this? And he goes back, ends up saying something even worse to her in Mandarin. Let's see. So I was talking about the old show, Quantum Leap. I know that show. I never watched that. Where they went back to Marilyn Monroe. I remember seeing Scott Bakula in a stage play about a year before he did that show, when he was still not very well known. In fact, it was a stage musical. Let's see. Yeah, Jim, you're disagreeing with me. Miss Monroe was great. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, people coming in later, today is the 63rd anniversary of her passing. My Katharine Hepburn impression. Thank you. Yep. Sure enough, when I took my hands off, the comments went blip, and now I got to get back here again. This is really annoying. Let me find where I was. Okay, Jim, Katharine Hepburn impression. Well, thank you ever so much. I saw her. I saw her on stage once. I saw her at the Kennedy Center many years ago, and it was 2 days. It was the Wednesday matinee performance. She had won her 4th Oscar for On Golden Pond Monday night, and then that Wednesday, like day and a half later, I saw her on stage. Fabulous. I loved Hepburn. I was 10 rows center, close enough to see the pores in her face. And I frankly didn't care if Katharine Hepburn read the phone book on stage for 2 hours. I just wanted to see her in person. And I'm so glad I did. Joyce, your experience with the retrograde has to do with phone chargers. Well, I guess we have our own thing. I guess I have my own thing there. See, I didn't shave before the show, and there's a reason for that. The battery went dead in my electric razor, and I discovered this a few minutes before the show, and there was just no time to charge it. So here I am, and here's my dead razor. But yeah, phone chargers. It's just, even that's in a way affecting communication. It's affecting your phone. Let's see. Chuck, my husband, felt the same way. He took ballet as an adult and was in the Nutcracker in the opening act as one of the parents. Well, bless him for doing that. I have my talents. I do, but that's just somehow that one escaped me. I just don't have it. But I love to watch dancers. I love to go to the ballet. I loved last night because it was a very dance-oriented Broadway musical. Lots of great tap dancing. That's what I would love to learn, tap dancing. Maybe the Nicholas granddaughters could do something with me, or they might scream at me like the way their grandfather did. You're hopeless. What can I do with you? Yeah, I remember Quantum Leap. There are a lot of other shows like that I just didn't watch. As I got older, I just found I had less and less time for television. Right now, my television viewing habits are like next to nothing. I have this big, beautiful 65-inch TV here, And I maybe turn it on 2 times a week, maybe 3 times, to where I'm even thinking I should let go of some streaming services. I'm just too busy with all my other projects and things. And I love to take time to read. I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, especially news podcasts, because I have to do a lot of preparation when I do what's now 2 shows a week with Dr. Whimsy Anderson. We talk about a lot of current events, and I have to do some homework. I have to be reasonably prepared. Otherwise, I look like a deer in the headlights and don't know what to talk about. And we got to keep the show moving. So I have to be prepared. So I listen to a lot of news podcasts now. There's certain people I respect. Like I love Heather Cox Richardson. I love listening to Mary Trump, David Pakman, Pete Buttigieg does some really good podcasts. So anyway, a lot of my time is spent doing that and working on my art commissions. So I just can't watch television. And then broadcast television is just dreadful right now. It's a lot of these awful game shows. And I shouldn't say awful because some people like them. I don't enjoy game shows, a lot of rowdy programming. And I want to use my time more constructively and creatively. So that's where I am. That's why I don't watch much TV anymore. But even back when in the era of Quantum Leap, I just didn't have, I had less and less time for stuff like that. When I was growing up, I've told this, I lived in a television tube, just lived in a television because my mother and father were huge television watchers. We would literally have the television on from early in the morning when the Today Show was on, all the way through the afternoon game shows. And then my mother would watch all of her soap operas. Then I'd come home from school, and then that's when the afternoon there'd be shows like I Love Lucy, and I'm trying to remember some of the others she's watched, Gilligan's Island, things like that. So I'd watch those, and then the news would come on, and we'd have the TV on in the kitchen. We'd be eating dinner, and then there'd be primetime programming, and then there'd be Johnny Carson. So it's a miracle we didn't burn out television after television. I grew up with that. But when I went to college, well, first of all, there was just anybody who's a serious college student knows you don't have time to watch TV. You're busy studying, doing your work. And then after college, I just got out of the TV habit and I watched less and less. Anyway, hope I didn't belabor that point, but that's why I didn't watch a lot of shows like Quantum Leap. But yet I can talk my head off about I Love Lucy and Gilligan's Island and Get Smart and Beverly Hillbillies and Andy Griffith and Carol Burnett, the shows that I did watch when I was a little kid. Joel Grey. Well, Andy, we are running out of time here. I don't know if I have too much I can say about Joel Grey. I don't know a whole lot about him. I mean, I know he won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for Cabaret. He played it on Broadway. His daughter is Jennifer Grey. I do know that Joel Grey, a few years ago, well into his elderly years, came out as gay. He's, and his daughter Jennifer was very proud of him for doing this, but he did not do this until very late in life. I know that about him, but he's a great talent. I don't really have much more I can say unless any of you other people have things you'd like to contribute about him. What was his choice? He wished as a child he had taken dance classes. You mean your husband? It would have helped him during his football career. Yes. In fact, I understand, like high school, college, a lot of football players, in fact, athletes, will be sent to dance school because you do develop, as I said, I would be sore from hair down to my toes. You use every muscle in your body, and there's definitely discipline involved, control. I could even see things like learning to leap. That would help an athlete, certainly a basketball player. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I always wished I had been given piano lessons as a child. We didn't have a piano in our house, never mind that fact, but I always wished I could have taken piano lessons. I did have the good fortune of playing the saxophone in high school band. So I do, to this day, I know how to read music. I do know how to play an instrument, but I wish I had been trained on piano. And I know, yes, I could get a piano and I could take lessons and all, but I'm just in a place I don't have time for that, and don't have room for a piano either. I'd have to get like a little keyboard. But yeah, I wish I'd done things like that earlier. And maybe if I'd taken dance earlier, I might have mastered it better. So many of these things, it is better when you're young and you're more absorbent and impressionable, and you're certainly at your physical peak during those years. What was his word? I bet Mr. Arnaz Jr. had learned to love the technical side of staging from early childhood. He probably did, because I know he and his sister Lucy Arnaz, as children, were always visiting the I Love Lucy set. And so I'm sure during downtimes they were probably going into the control booth and up in the catwalk and the lights and stuff. So it may have originated with that. It just might have. And of course, they later worked on the show with their mother. And I know they also visited the Lucy show set. They, even as very young children, they had little bit parts on the Lucy show until Lucy gave up the Lucy show to do Here's Lucy. And the main reason she wanted to change the format was she was tired of the show as it was, and she wanted to work with her two children, her two teenage children. And she later admitted one of the reasons was she wanted to keep an eye on them. And she thought that was a good way to do it, just to work with her kids. But she also wanted, they both had expressed interest in show business, so she wanted to give her children a really good head start. You know, and you don't get better than working with the great Lucille Ball. Even if she's your mother, you're still working with the best of the best, you know, and you're learning comic timing and presence and to work in front of an audience and a camera. And I know that served them both. And Lucy Arnaz went on to more of a Broadway career, but definitely she got that from working with audiences in those days. And let's see, what are some other comments here? Oh, Joe Andy, I loved him singing on YouTube. He was the Wizard in Wicked. Yeah, I was going to say he did do Wicked. I think he did it Broadway and he toured with it also. Joyce, you'll go to all the performances you can. I have no doubt about that. And I bet you're going to be there with your phone recording the whole show and everything. You're going to be proud, Grandma. And I just lost my comments again. I got to go back here. Where? Okay, I'll go back to Joyce. Yes, okay, I'm back to the comment. You said I will go to all the performances I can. And Ward, Mr. French's brother did the am I saying this right? The malapropism. I know the word, I just don't know the pronunciation. Malapropism to the Chinese girl. Yes, it was Mr. I said that. It was Niles French, because Sebastian Cabot had a heart attack and they had to write him off the show for a while, but they didn't want to lose him, and they wanted to keep the presence of the English butler, so they just brought in the brother character. Ward, there was never an episode with both the French brothers appearing together. Yeah, that was a missed opportunity. They should have done that. I did like it the last year when they brought Nancy Walker on as the housekeeper. It was such a contrast of characters, you know, the very, very British, proper Queen's English Mr. French, and here was like New York, Bronx, Nancy Walker, you know, and that was kind of cute. I haven't watched that show in years, and I told the story last year of having lunch with Kathy Garver, who played Sissy, and it was through a mutual friend that I got to do that. She was here in Hollywood for the day because they were doing a dedication of the star for Juanita Moore. And I was there with them, and then we went out to lunch, and she's a lovely, lovely lady, just so sweet. And she loves to talk about family affair. I've said many times, I'm very conscious about celebrity etiquette, not being annoying, asking too many questions, but she was okay with it. So I took advantage of the time. I asked her questions about the show, and it was fun to hearing the inside track. But she has great reverence for the show, for the character she played. She's very aware of how lucky she was. Some actors like Tina Louise of Gilligan's Island, she disowns that show. She does not want to talk about Ginger at the show. But there are people like Kathy Garver who will happily and proudly talk about the show and the character and the impact. And when we were walking back to the car, we walked down Hollywood Boulevard, the Walk of Fame. And there were some homeless people on the sidewalks. Unfortunately, it's downtown Hollywood. So she took my arm. She wanted me to escort her. And I was very proud to do that. And so, it was the little 6-year-old boy in me who remembered watching her in Family Affair. And I thought, wow, I've got Sissy Davis on my arm, and we're walking across the stars on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. There was that little part there, but anyway, she's a lovely, lovely lady. I've said that enough times, haven't I? Yes, and Anissa Jones, and we did talk about her a little bit, the tragedy of that. And she spoke so warmly of Brian Keith. And she was reminding me that he had once been a Marine. And she said he had that real tough, masculine presence, the Marine. But she said he could be so tender and so sweet and so loving. And the Uncle Bill character kind of encompassed all that together. And that's what made him so multidimensional, but made him so endearing and so lovable. It's like vicariously you could feel how safe those children were with him, that nothing bad was going to happen to them on his watch. That came through with Uncle Bill, and she mentioned that. But Brian Keith had a series. It didn't do well. I think it got canceled after half a season, or may have made one season, aired about 2 or 3 years after Family Affair. And Brian Keith knew that Anissa Jones was in trouble. And he went so far as to offer to have his writers create a character for her, just for her, so she could be on the show. Because Brian Keith thought, well, maybe if I can get her on the show and we get her working and doing something responsible and I can watch over, we can maybe save her. But she didn't want to do the show. She just wanted to leave show business altogether. But he tried to reach out to her. Let's see, where were some other comments here? Same here. Mr. Cabot died too young, and Mr. Keith's death, very tragic. Well, it's my understanding he had terminal cancer, and he made the decision to commit suicide. He put a gun in his mouth. Yeah, it's very sad. A lot of tragedy. Johnny Whitaker and Kathy Garver, the only 2 surviving cast members. And I did not bring this up with her, and I certainly don't. And I have great respect for Kathy, so I don't want to say things disparaging, but I've heard that she and Johnny, they've had complications. They don't get along that well. Maybe they've patched up their differences. I don't know. I've met Johnny Whitaker also, and it's really, he was very sweet to me too. It was just a little shock to see, you think a little curly-haired, red-haired Jody, and he's, for want of a better way of saying it, he's an old man now. He's my age, by the way. So I'm saying that. So please, I'm not saying that derogatory, but he frankly looks his age now and on. So it's a little shock to think this was once little Jody, but I've met him. Kathy Garver, on the other hand, she looks extraordinary. She has really held up well. She still looks like Sissy. Her voice still sounds like Sissy. Let's see. Gracie Allen was the queen of malapropisms. Oh God, I love Gracie Allen. I love her. I am such a fan of hers. She and George Burns. In fact, in one of my videos I did a long time ago, they are interred side by side in a mausoleum here in Glendale, and I've gone there many times just to pay my respects. And I've left flowers. I've sat on the bench that George Burns used to sit on. And the way their names appear on their grave, it's Gracie Allen and George Burns. And George Burns, before his death, said, I want Gracie to have, I had top billing during our lifetime, but in eternity, I want her to have top billing. So it's Allen and Burns on there, and it just says together forever. And I can't help but smile when I go there, because I believe, just like Lucy and Desi, George and Gracie were soulmates. And I was talking about Jane Mansfield earlier, allegedly having an high IQ, but I've heard much more confirmation that Gracie had a high IQ. I've told the story the time I was at Paul Henning's house in Toluca Lake, who was the head writer and creator of the Beverly Hillbillies. Well, he performed that service for Burns and Allen, going back to the radio days and later their television show. And I was talking to his wife, Ruth, who had a close friendship with Gracie. And I asked her, and she said, oh, yes, it's true. Gracie was a very smart woman in real life. It said you have to play dumb. You got to be really smart. Though Gracie did not play dumb. She just had her own perspective of the world, the way she saw things. So she was almost like one of those carnival house mirrors that twists and distorts. But that was Gracie's reality, the character. And she did it magnificently. Oh, watch her, the subtlety of her timing and the way she and George worked together. And they were just like a finely oiled machine. They had worked together close to, by the end, I think almost 40 years, because they were working together before they got married. They originally teamed up in vaudeville. I think it was around 1924, 25-ish in that area. And they were married in 1926. And the story was Gracie was not initially attracted to George, and she had a boyfriend. And she was even planning to marry this boyfriend. And George fell in love with Gracie, and to the point where he didn't think he could work with her anymore. And he issued the ultimatum. He said, Gracie, if you want him, I've got to leave the act. I can't work with you anymore. I can't do this. And it was just before Christmas, 1926. And George got a phone call that night. And Gracie said she had been crying all day long. And she said, I just realized anybody who can make me cry this much, I must love. And they very quickly after that got married. And they were married until her death in 1964. And of course, she retired in 1958, their television show. That's what ended the act. But you watch Burns and Allen on television. They are so much fun to play off of each other because it's just like Lucy and Desi. It was real. It was honest. And they had such talent. And, a really good book, it's probably out of print now, but you could probably find it. In fact, I think the audiobook version is on YouTube, unless someone took it down, where it's George Burns reading the story. But it's his book, Gracie. It's called Gracie. And the subtitle below that is A Love Story. Gracie, A Love Story. And it came out 1988, and it was a #1 bestseller. And it's the whole book is just a love letter to Gracie, but it's very honest. It goes into the problems they had. Like George, unfortunately, cheated on Gracie, and Gracie knew about it. She found out, and there was a story of how she wanted to get this sterling silver centerpiece for the table. And George said, no, it's too much money. It's too much money. No, we're not getting it, Gracie. Well, he found out that she knew about his affair. And Gracie never said one word. But George was consumed with guilt. So consumed, he went out and bought the very expensive sterling silver centerpiece for the table and bought Gracie a big, huge diamond ring. And he said Gracie just graciously accepted everything, still didn't say a word. And it was only a few months later, he found out that she was out with Jack Benny's wife, Mary, and they were friends, and they were out shopping. No, I think this was maybe a year or two later, or something like this. And Gracie said, that centerpiece I have is getting really old. I need a new one. I wish George would cheat again. George thought that was hysterical that she had known. And he later found out that Gracie had said to another friend whose husband was cheating, and Gracie advised her, you got to look at the bigger picture here. Yes, I understand you're hurt, but look at the bigger picture. Look at your marriage, look at your family, your children, and so that was the stance Gracie came from. She was looking at the bigger picture. She obviously loved George. They had their children. They had the TV show, the career. So Gracie that was her choice in handling it. But George was so devoted to her. And there was also a story in there how when she started getting really sick, when her heart started giving out. Sorry, I just had a message from Whimsy here. She wants me to take care of something. But anyway, Yes, Whimsy, I'll get back to you. I don't know if she's watching this right now. She just sent me some texts. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, she was getting sick. And the medication she had to take for her heart caused her hair to thin out. And of course, George wore a toupee. He was famous for that. But Gracie had to start wearing wigs. And George said when they, yes, Whimsy, I'll be back with you. She said when they'd go to bed at night, their wig stands would be on the dresser. His with his toupee and hers with her wig. And that's how they'd go to bed at night, looking at their hair on the wig stands. And then there was a sweet story. Gracie loved to shop. And George, you say, well, who am I to stop her? All the money she has made for the two of us, if she wants to go shopping, she has a right to go shopping. But she was so ill that she couldn't do that anymore. And George went to a store and he found the most beautiful mink coat he could possibly find. And he had it wrapped beautifully, beautiful box. And she was in bed and she was so sick and she was so depressed. And he just laid the box in front of her and said, I went shopping for you. And he said she started crying when she saw the mink coat. And she said, oh, George, I can't be dying. If you're going to buy me a beautiful coat like this, I have to live. So it was just amazing, the relationship they had. But I really recommend that book. And if you can, listen to the audiobook and hear George tell it in his own words. And when it comes to the part where Gracie died and you hear George's voice cracking and breaking a little, it defy you not to cry. I better get back to my comments here. And I'm just seeing the time here, 6:57. I have got to sign out soon because Anastasia's show is in like 3 minutes. I'm going to speed through these last comments here. Oh, please forgive me. I may have to address some of these next week because Anastasia's show is... I always want to give Anastasia, my dear friend, my full support and be there for her. And yes, Jim, Anastasia's coming on in 3 minutes here. So I'm going to, out of respect to my dear friend and my gracious respect to all of you, I am going to sign out right now. And we have been on close to 2 hours now. So I am going to sign out. I'll be here next week. If you get a chance, check me out on the Oracle Whimsy channel, Dr. Whimsy Anderson Show, Taco Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm on there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we talk a lot of news events. And of course, I'm here. And yes, I will give Sasha a hug. So I'm going to sign out real quick. Most of you know this already because you do go to Anastasia's show, but it's her channel, The Sacred Spears, and she will be on soon. And thank you all so much. I appreciate you all greatly. And I wish we didn't have to end because I've got more Gracie Allen stuff I could talk about, but just remind me next week if you want to hear more. We'll talk about it. So I'm going to sign out for right now. Have a good night.